If I can jump in very fast.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Molly. Discussions with investors clearly say that indicate that all startups have to evaluate our carbon footprint at the moment when we are looking for investors. The moment when we are speaking to investors, this is one of the questions they ask: what is your carbon footprint? Because for them, it is critical to have within the portfolio the companies with a positive situation, let's say, in the progress in this space. Any insight on this part would be particularly useful and helpful for all of us, I'm sure.
On the carbon footprinting.
Yes, everything related to carbon accounting for small startups, when you're just starting. So we had this previous session before when we already started discussing it. Maybe a simple way of, starting, where to start, what is the good practice, just for a really zero level of understanding. Those who really never did anything in this space. Thank you. Jumping on.
Okay, no problem. So I will start by saying, I'm not a sustainability consultant. I work in the sustainability team at Oxwash. So I will try as far as possible to answer questions and to give advice, but really I can share the Oxwash story. And I hope that will be of use in itself. So this presentation that we've put together is basically like I hope, a really accessible guide to where to start with sustainability on the sustainability journey, whether that is carbon accounting or your social impacts. That all of that I hope will be encompassed in this presentation. As I said, I'm from Oxwash. I don't know if any of you know Oxwash, so a little introduction. We are a sustainable laundry company. We're actually a tech startup because we are an on-demand service. So people use our platform to order our service. And we started here in Oxford. We've now expanded to Cambridge and Battersea with a new massive, we call them lagoons, a new hub opening in Swindon, which is about 20 times bigger than what we're currently working with. So it's a really exciting time at Oxwash. The mission at Oxwash really is to be the world's most sustainable laundry service with a net zero impact. And I'm happy to say that we're well on our way to achieving that. In 2022, we became the first B Corp certified laundry service in the world. And so we're just running with it from there. Let me see. Okay, so this presentation, let's run through 5 practical steps to sustainability. Firstly, we'll look at identifying key impact areas. So that's really big picture thinking about your business and your industry, and looking at areas that you can make a difference. And it's a really good way to think about kind of where you want to go, what your purpose is, not just for sustainability, but also kind of business road mapping. Then we'll touch on carbon accounting, supply chains, social impact. I do want to say that sustainability, it's really important to note that that is not just environmental, it's also social. So you've got to have a balance of the two. It shouldn't necessarily all be weighted on the environmental, even though that's really what the media focuses on. People and planet go hand in hand. And then finally, reporting and certification. It's really important part of sustainability to shout about all of your achievements and to be able to measure them. So, knowing what your impact is, putting that into figures, shouting about it on your socials. If you want to get certified, as I said, we are B Corp certified. Not everyone has to be a sustainable business and a successful one, but that's a good framework to refer to anyway. As I run through these slides, oh, who can I hear?
Sorry, it's not me.
That's all right. As I run through, please do pop in with questions. I really like it when it's a discussion rather than just a lecture. I don't have all the answers, and it's really good to learn from each other. As I've been in this space, at various kind of sustainability roundtables. I've learned so much from other people, not necessarily from the speaker. So please do share your experience, because that will inspire others. And one of kind of the most helpful things that I've had on my sustainability journey is actually attending one of these things where I've come away with so much clarity. So do jump in at any time. So let's start with identifying your key impact areas. So ask yourself, in your industry, not just your business, what are the climate and social risks and opportunities? So it's really about knowing your industry well and being able to identify, okay, what's not so great about it, what's working well. So for us in laundry, laundry has a staggering environmental impact. It's really shocking once you look into it. So with that in mind, we wanted to be different because we know that we can make a difference. So we're really re-engineering the laundry process, the laundry industry from the ground up, whether that is our zero emission delivery or our journey to net zero across all three scopes, or our water reclamation, you know, all sorts of things. Sustainability is really woven through the core of Oxwash. And a way to do this would be with stakeholder questionnaires, doing your research. You might use a framework such as the B Corp assessment. That's a really good, accessible assessment. Even if you don't go on to be B Corp certified, just having a framework to kind of give you those nudges to ask, okay, have you considered these areas? What's your impact in them? Can you make a difference? Can you kind of come up with a different way of working? And hopefully that will help you to get clear on your purpose as a business. It might feed into your kind of, you know, like business standards, your goals, all that sort of thing. It's really important to kind of come back to this, okay, why are we doing it? And if someone was to ask you, you know, why, to just kind of have that, you know, elevator pitch to say, oh, because. So for us, what that would look like at Oxwash, having done our research, having engaged with our stakeholders, a list of our key points, planet and people, so always having those two categories, climate and our emissions as a service, which traditionally uses a lot of gas and electricity. We know that we want to reduce our emissions and get them as low as possible. So climate and emissions is always going to be up there. We are a gas-heavy industry. Water, we wash clothes with water, but can we minimize that? Microplastics. Now, fashion, as we all know, is a huge source of microplastics. We can influence what people buy and what people wash, but ultimately that's out of our control. So when we have those clothes come to us, can we ensure that no microplastics reach the waterways? We're working with partners, filter partners, to capture those microplastics and divert them from our water. No toxicity. It's really important to us that we've gone down a route of water-based washing, whereas you may or may not know that traditional dry cleaning uses a highly toxic chemical derived from petroleum called perchloroethylene, or you might hear it called PERC. And this is incredible at washing clothes. It's terrible for polluting our oceans, our planet, and us. It's a known carcinogenic. So we have gone down the route of water and biodegradable detergents, and we work very closely with our chemical supplier to ensure that they are safe and non-toxic. And then finally, circularity. This is a really interesting one that I'll touch on in a little bit, but knowing that whatever we bring into our process, we don't want to put that into landfill. So we want to be able to track that whole cycle and essentially ensure that we're preventing anything from polluting the planet. So that might look like, well, an example here is our chemistry comes in massive 20-litre barrels, and we're working with our partner to ask them to take it back, so that we're not, throwing away or recycling that plastic. we're keeping that completely circular. The future of Oxwash as well, as a whole, is we are investing in circular fashion. If you're not sure, that means fashion rental companies. So if I was to rent a dress, and then Andrea wanted to borrow that dress, between us, there would have to be a washing cycle. And now those rental companies could choose to use a massive laundry processing hub down the road, which uses perchloroethylene and has massive gas and electricity emissions and delivers and picks up in diesel lorries. Or we can provide that alternative, the zero carbon delivery and a more sustainable washing process. And then people. So it's also important to think about your people, not just within the team, but also your stakeholders and your local communities in which you operate. How can you make a difference to them? Internally, we are a living wage payer. We have set out our roadmaps, our targets, our goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We work closely with our suppliers to ensure that the standards, the human rights standards, are consistent, not just in Oxwash, but everyone with whom we engage. Our local communities, this is a really interesting one, and can be quite a challenging one to engage with the local communities. But it kind of comes back to what I was saying, identifying your key areas. How can you, as a company, make a difference to your local community? One thing that I identified at Oxwash is in all 3 locations in which we operate, Oxford, Cambridge, and London, homelessness is a huge issue in those areas. So can we offer our service? We chose to offer our service instead of initially donating money straight away, to reach out to shelters and offer to wash their linens, or to do a clothing drive. We're working with, I don't know if anyone knows, a charity called the Gatehouse in Oxford, and they run a shower project which welcomes anyone in if they would like to have a shower. Those towels need to be washed. So if we can just step in and provide the service to facilitate what they're doing, then that's great. And then finally, circular fashion, I've already touched on that a little bit.
Sorry, I have a quick question or a quick observation. So
go ahead.
On the right hand side on this your list of key points, I really like the way that you kind of framed that, because it's dead simple. It's planet, people. What are the impacts that you have? Or what are the impacts that your industry has? And then against those impacts, you almost put mitigation strategies. So we know that our industry does this, we're going to do it slightly different. So even that is like a nice framework. Planet, people, this is what our industry does, this is what's important, and then this is what we're going to do differently, or these are the action points that we're going to take off that. Because sometimes we're struggling with just where do we start, and there's this kind of natural leaning towards environment, when, as you've quite rightly said, it's people as well. Like in international trade where I go, it's shared global prosperity, it's all of those things. So I just love the way you framed it there in that little box. I just thought I'd say anyway. I'll mute myself again now.
No, thank you so much. That's a really, really good feedback and really good practice to do that kind of, using that framework. And also, I hope that in doing that, by saying, these are the issues in the industry and this is what we're going to do about them, that I hope that gives all of you as small businesses that real kind of boost and that confidence to know why you're doing it and that you're doing something great. And that's really part of what it is. Please jump in if you've got any questions on this slide. Otherwise, we'll move on.
I was just going to say, I was quite surprised, following on from that point. So I looked at the sustainability goals and I assumed that some of them would be relevant to me, but actually it is actually more of the community ones that are
amazing,
are actionable, rather than the kind of, because we're in a wood, I kind of naturally assumed plants and whatever, but because of if you actually dig down to what the objectives are under each of the goals, then some of the objectives that we could achieve were under not necessarily the obvious ones, people and community and the local industry or something. I thought there were some things that we could really do. like joining up with the local community, like local suppliers and stuff, ticked sustainability goals I hadn't kind of thought about. So
brilliant. Yeah, and please don't undervalue the power of local community and people. I think people always assume, you know, saving the planet is about saving the whole planet, but actually it's your little area of it. And also, when you introduce yourself and your business, I was thinking about, you know, how much value you could bring to the people around you if you were to work with schools as well. Working with kids and educating them on sustainability is a really good thing for all businesses to do. Thinking about that next generation. That's just an idea.
And I think as well, when you look at the sustainable, the SDGs, and they're quite overwhelming, aren't they, as an SME, because you think, how can I address all of these? And the thing is, you possibly can't, but if you just pick a handful of them that you're going to focus on, and then because we're so voluminous in terms of the number of SMEs in the UK, on the planet as a whole, our collective power, if we're all just focusing on a couple of SDGs and you know, going about that the right way, then, you know, we're going to create change. Just by that very fact, we're going to create change. So I know the SDGs, when I was doing a lot of work on them for our business, they just look a little bit overwhelming, don't they? Like, well, how can my business possibly impact that area? But it's breaking it down and just selecting one or two. It's like Kate says, it's communities and other ones that might be applicable to your business. Sorry, I'll mute myself again now.
No, we're good. I'm going to move on because I'm conscious of time. So, carbon accounting. Okay. This can be a really big topic, so I'm going to try to keep it as narrow as possible. Carbon accounting basically means measuring your impact. You have 3 scopes, scopes 1, 2, and 3. I apologize if you know all of this before, but I'll just run over it very quickly. Scope 1 is your direct emissions. So that's what you're actually burning. So for us at Oxwash, that's our natural gas. We are working to move away from that. So we have recently transitioned to biogas, which it does still have an impact, but a much lower one, and it can be considered carbon neutral. Scope 2 is your indirect emissions. So that is most likely your electricity. That is to say non-renewable electricity. If you are on a renewable supplier, then your scope 2 may be 0. Scope 3, for want of a better phrase, is everything else. So for us, that's it's everything in your value chain. It might be packaging. So if you were, for example, a clothing company, that would be your material, your packaging, your transportation, not just your commuting, but also your business travel. Water comes under scope 3. Capital goods, equipment, facilities, all of that sort of thing. So where to start? I would say that, I'll give a little disclaimer. At Oxwash, I give full credit to our directors for this. They decided to invest in a sustainability team who could spend their time on carbon accounting in-house. And that's what my job is. However, that is a total luxury, and it's not the norm in business. A lot of businesses will use either a paid service. So, there are a lot of carbon accounting services out there, or you might use a fairly basic free model. And that's really what I would suggest to start with. And so you are basically measuring what you can measure. That might be your electricity bills and your gas bills. That's usually where these carbon accounting companies start. And then if you are able to measure your material, if you have a product, your material impact, then that is brilliant as well. So I'm trying to think how to make it as simple as possible. To be able to measure your carbon account, your impact, you have what's called a conversion factor. And these are available from the government website, and I can send a link through afterwards. And these are approved by the UK government. they measure them, they kind of calculate them in various ways, but you don't need to worry too much about that. It basically gives you a figure that you multiply, for example, your kilowatt hours, if you are using your electricity, you multiply it by that figure, and that will give you a quantity of carbon. And that would fall under, say, your scope 2 if it's electricity. And then, so by setting out all of these measurements, however basic, starting with scopes 1 and 2 is more than enough for a small business. Then you can start with a baseline and say, okay, this was my impact in 2022. In 2023, I'm going to attempt to bring that down by 10%. So then you can start to use that baseline to set goals for your next few years. You can create a model where you model it alongside your projected growth as well. That's what we've done at Oxwash, so that we can map out that journey to net zero for us by 2028. So it's all about continually improving your accuracy. So start with scopes 1 and 2, and then maybe add in scope 3 in the next couple of years. Use all of that to set your reduction targets. And then you'll get to a point where, okay, you've reduced as much as you can as a company, but to be able to be net carbon neutral, you would likely choose to offset or carbon remove what you can't further reduce. And there's a difference between offsetting and carbon removal. So offsetting means for every ton of carbon that I emit here, I'm going to pay to avoid it over there. And that is often in countries such as India or Africa. Carbon removal is a more technical, scientific way of actually removing carbon from the atmosphere. So it's incredible technology that has come out in recent years, and it's always improving to remove that carbon from the atmosphere. And that is what we at Oxwash personally prefer to do. It is more expensive, but it means that you're actively participating in the reduction of climate carbon. So you can have a little look on the right-hand side here. This is actually from our 2022 sustainability report. So this is actually what our scopes 1, 2, and 3 look like. And the amount of carbon that we've calculated for all of those categories. Now, I'm conscious also that carbon accounting is a very difficult one to go over without a model, without providing a model. I can't provide a model because we built ours in-house. However, do have a look online to see if you can find any free services that are available, just to start thinking about how you would measure your impact. And I will say that we've got different SMEs on this call, and you will look very different from how we look at Oxwash, because we are a service with physical locations. We're now at 115 staff with direct emissions. So ours will be very different from yours. For example, if you're a one-person consulting, that will be different from Oxwash. So, any questions on this?
Anyone? Don't be shy.
Right, yeah, I've got a question. I think it's really interesting to understand how the pressure that comes from, a hotel or something similar, So I think obviously, as you've rightly pointed out, sustainability is almost a scale, So you could do something that is slightly more sustainable than things currently, or you could make a quite rapid change. So someone like a hotel, for example, are they recognizing that they're doing something that's, for want of a better term, not sustainable, and they're looking for something more sustainable, and that's it? Or actually, are they looking to make quite big inroads in sustainability? I guess, like, how much pressure are they putting on you to deliver that for them and sort out their, kind of, as you said, their supply chain?
That's really interesting, and it definitely illustrates how interconnected businesses are. And so I hope it will show that actually, if you're not, accounting for your footprint at the moment, in the future, all businesses will need to, because of how connected the supply chains are. So for us, I'd say it's actually the other way around, where we are putting pressure on businesses to make that change. So we're saying that you're going to need to make reductions to your footprint, choose Oxwash, because that will cut your emissions by this much, and I can calculate how much for them. At the moment, it's unfortunately still a case of money. So businesses will always go for the cheaper option, especially if they're a massive business. Smaller independents will certainly choose the better option, because I think they recognize that it's an investment down the road. And it's really interesting to have that conversation with other businesses, saying you've got to start thinking about it. And when we look at our supply chain, we will demand our the kind of sustainability report from our potential suppliers. If they are not able to provide that, then we may not go with them. So it's getting other businesses to realize that this is an important issue for business, not just a nice to have anymore. However, talking to the sales team in the last year, the focus was to sustainability with the cost of living. It slightly switched the other way, but now it's creeping back up again. So it will fluctuate. But I think everyone now is very conscious of, okay, we got to get real about this. And it's better to start than to not. It's better to do something small than nothing at all.
Yeah, because I recognise I used to work with a large fashion brand who were trying to be more sustainable by using less water, different types of dyes, and so on and so forth. And their biggest challenge was how to do that cost effectively.
Yeah.
Because it all costs money that you need to pass on to someone who's not willing to pay. So I find it quite interesting that there's no pressure from local or national government, do you know what I mean, to almost create the customer for you, if you see what I mean, which is also, I think, quite poor. I
think it will change in the next 2 years. Yeah,
right.
I think businesses will have to go down that route. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as we hear the term greenwashing on a daily basis, I think the idea obviously that you've got sort of carbon accounting, and people are going to have a
they're going to have to have that transparency. Yeah,
and to say, you know, here we are a horrific polluter and we wash 1 million towels a year, and this is the effect of it, is going to be a big glaring problem on someone's sustainability reports. As a result, they're going to have to outsource that or fix it themselves.
Yeah, I think it will come to be like finance, where you've got to be clear about your books. Same with your carbon accounts. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
I will jump in very fast, Molly, Andrea, excellent presentation. I like a lot, I appreciate a lot that this very pragmatic bottom-up approach, that you're really solving the problem. You're really, with the company, with the team, you're really working on a very concrete, very clear problem, because there are so many companies that we see around us that are just, you know, very high level ideas, but nothing pragmatic. So you're really doing the very very important, you know, everyone, if we were doing this important small bricks, it will change the world. So this is we should solve very pragmatic questions. And I do see behind what you're doing, like a choice of a washing machine, right? Which type of washing machine, where it comes from, for Taiwan, or from where they are coming. So I have so many questions. I have a little bit more, maybe another question, another space. So I saw you, so you're certified B Corporation. My question is, why did you decide to do this, and is it something that you really see that has impact? Yes, so this very small, also pragmatic question. I'm sorry for a startup.
No, that's a really good question. The founders always wanted to be B Corp. It is the kind of the highest standard for environmental and social impact. It's a really powerful community to be part of. To have that B Corp logo does a lot for your company. The fact that we were the first laundry as well is something huge that we can shout about. It is a really good corporation to be part of. There are definitely flaws in the certification process that are being addressed currently. It's not necessary at all. You don't have to be B Corp certified, but it's a really easy way for consumers to see, okay, that's a good company. And I personally use it myself. If I'm out, looking for an item and I see the B Corp logo, that tells me a lot. Having said that, companies do not have to be B Corp certified to be sustainable. And as I said, the B Corp assessment is actually open source. So you don't have to go all the way through to become certified. You can use it as a framework and to, just to challenge yourself and to meet those standards.
Thank you very much. I just shared there is a Harvard Business School Alumni Angels in London in May. Applications are open now. So guys, jump in, apply. I will apply, so we will be competing there. So it concerns everybody. Molly, it concerns you as much. Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit of competition for startups.
Nice.
Teaching competition. Thank you.
Cool. So should we have a look at, at supply chains? We've slightly touched on this already. Supply chains, you want to consider not just what is within your business, but everything that feeds into it. So for us, we want to make sure that our supply chains are as transparent and as accountable as possible. And we do that by writing a supplier code of conduct. And this aligns with all of our principles at Oxwash. We want to ensure that our suppliers are treating their staff as well as we would hope to treat us, and that they are as sustainability minded as we are, so that we want to have confidence in using their product or whatever they bring us. So writing that supplier code of conduct and a self-assessment questionnaire when we approach a new supplier, or we will regularly send this out to our existing suppliers to maintain that level, that standard. We ask them to fill it in, and that can help us to choose a supplier to go for. Now, if a supplier doesn't fill it in at all, that might be a red flag. If they fill it in and they don't meet all the criteria, that's not a bad thing. It may mean that they're a small business, as we were, and that we can actually support them on their sustainability journey. So don't forget the power of knowledge exchange and collaboration. We've done this with our suppliers, particularly our chemistry supplier, to say, look, as a company, we need to be circular. We want our supply chain to be as circular as possible. Is this something that you can do? They came back and said, yes, we can. And now they have implemented this circular chemistry loop. They take back all of their containers, refill them, bring them back. And this is something that they have then offered to their other customers. And so that is a huge impact to have coming from us simply asking the question, can we work with you in this way? And so don't forget that being a sustainable business is being part of a sustainable community. Our supplier code of conduct is available on our website if you want to have a look at it. We're quite open about that, as well as our sustainability report, which has a little bit more about this on there. When we choose our suppliers, we want to open up that open communication. It's about building a really good relationship. They will also want to vet us to see our practice. So it's really good to make sure that you have your information, your data available to give to them. Any questions on that? I'm conscious that some people may not have a huge supply chain here, and that's fine.
I think it's a really good template, Molly, to be honest, framework and template to kind of use moving forward, even if it's not applicable right now. And the fact that you can influence people to adopt it, and also not necessarily discount a supplier because they don't have it, but actually help them to embrace the same principles that you do. So I think, yeah, that's really clear and really good.
Yeah, it was a really good learning point for me, actually, thinking, you know, it's really hard to find the perfect supplier because they don't exist yet. And so you can help that to happen. Cool. Okay. Next one, let's look at social impact. Okay, so social impact falls under my remit at Oxwash. We started out as a sustainable business on the environmental side. Our social side was a little bit more ad hoc, I would say. So we would go out there into the community, our CEO and our COO would chat away, and they were very charming, but there was no structure to it. So I retrospectively had to come up with our social impact roadmap, which was a little bit harder to do. So I would say, as a small business, start out from the beginning, knowing your environmental impact roadmap and your what social impact you want to have. It's always going to be harder if you do things retrospectively than if you have a little idea, just, you know, nothing too formal, but an idea from the start of what impact you would like to have. To get to this point, as I said earlier, we asked our stakeholders, we did our research and looked at our local community to say, okay, what are the main issues that we want to address and make a difference with in our community. One of those things was homelessness and the cost of living. So by offering our free service. Social is not just your community though, it's your employees. What are you already doing? It may be that you haven't written down what you're doing. So this is if you have employees, it may just be you, one-man team. How can you improve on what you're doing as well? So just making a list. Again, things don't have to be all documented and formal. Just make a list. That's a good place to start. What you're doing and what could be better. And then thinking about the slightly wider circles, so not just your employees, but let's take it out a little bit wider. What is needed in your community? And what about your supply chain? Are there any charities that really align with your mission? At Oxwash, we're mostly about water, so let's think about water charities that we could partner up with to, I don't know, reforest the seagrass in Dorset or something like that. And then whatever you do, really try to account for it. So just keep a tally, keep a note of the impact that you have. Over the years, so since 2018 when we started, I have no idea how many hours we donated in talking to schools, in talking to local businesses like you guys, in random free washes that we've given. I think we did a lot during the pandemic for the NHS. All of that has an incredible social value. And don't waste that, because that is really good data to have on your side, but not least for marketing, or if you were ever to tender for something. It's only now in 22-23 that we are starting to measure that impact, and I wish we'd done it before, but it's all good. You can always start again. So it might look like measuring the stats. It might be the number of people that you support. So for example, if you I don't know, if Kate, you welcomed in 12 school kids who wouldn't otherwise be able to have fun and the free time to play, you might be helping those 12 kids. It might be hours volunteered, and volunteering doesn't always look like going into a charity or a soup kitchen. It might be talking to other businesses. So this would probably fall under our social impact at Oxwash by sharing our story. Or it might be a more formal monetary donation. And just keep track of everything that you do. At the end of the year, if you were to do a report, it can be interesting to put that into figures, into charts and graphs. And you can see two examples here of our internal stats at Oxwash, our leadership team. There's more in our sustainability report. And this is something that we will work on this year. Now at Oxwash, we use something called the TOMS National Framework. This is a framework to measure your social value. You can access it both free and paid. If you go with a paid version, I believe you get a consultant who kind of helps you to build that framework, or you can open access the information, which is actually what we did at Oxwash, just give you an idea of where to start, what to measure, and also some ideas of where you can make a difference. Cool. Any questions on that one? Social impact, I would say, is a very open topic. There's so much that you can do, there's so much scope, and I think it brings a lot of kind of fun and creativity to your business to think, okay, a little bit wider, not just laundry, but what else is there that we can help with?
Question, Molly. Elena, again, jumping in. What do you think is the optimal, let's say, size for your company in future? What have you evaluated this to like? What is the horizon that you're going to develop towards?
So the number of people, you mean?
Number of people or a number of sites where you propose your services? Are you going to stay just within the UK, or you're going to expand?
Yeah. I will say I'm not the CEO. I can't make those decisions. Currently, as I said, we're 115. In 2022, we doubled our team. So that was a huge year for Oxwash. That 115 has filled out our current infrastructure. So that's Oxford, London, Cambridge. The guys, in the laundries doing the processing, as well as us in HQ, all come within that figure. Now we've acquired a site that is 20 times larger than any of our current ones in Swindon, and we need to fill that. So I'm not sure by how much, because that will be a very steady growth in Swindon. But I believe we're going to keep HQ as it is at the moment, with around 60 people, and we will grow the operations team a lot more on the ground. And then I think they're looking at further afield, whether that is more small hubs like our Oxford, London, Cambridge around the country, or more big hubs like our Swindon, and then taking it to Europe and America at some stage. They have global ambitions. We want to be the most sustainable laundry company in the world. And so for that, I think they're going to have to go global. Or at least, I actually said at the start, we're a tech startup. Perhaps it would be that we sell our product rather than opening new hubs. There's big ambition. Let's just say that.
I think very quickly you're going to be out of the SME space into the corporate space, and you're going to be bound by all the regulation. But the beauty of it is you've got the foundation in place. Nothing's going to come as a surprise to you, is it? Exactly.
So if you start small and then you grow, you just expand what you've already got.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last one, reporting and certification. So you've got all this data, kind of what do you do with it? Plan out your data collection and your measurements, and then always know where you got your sources, where you got your data from. You can use external certification, like I said, B Corp, whether you choose to be a company that is 1% your profits for the planet. We have our targets approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative. So that's a really useful one for us if we're tendering for a massive customer. A lot of businesses want to see that we actually have a mapped out, approved road to net zero. Whether you go down that route or whether you just have those figures, make sure you use them for marketing purposes, to attract new customers. Put it on your socials, create a report at the end of the year. Doesn't have to be anything big. It could be a one-page thing, a document that just goes on your website, anything like that. But I will say, if you do the work to track your impact, then make sure you shout about it, because it's got so much value. And that value is just going to increase over the coming years. People now want to see what is a company doing and what is a company going to do in the future. Tell them how many people that you help, because then that shows, okay, they're not just about profit. They're a company who is a mindful company, mindful of the environment as well as the community, the people. Yeah, there's so much that you can do with it at this stage when you've collected it. Any questions? Good on that. If you want to look at some examples, this is our sustainability report. So if you just go on our website, you can access that. It's also on our LinkedIn and all of those places. And that will give you a really good example, both 21 and 22, for how we use our data. And also, I mean, on initial glances, you might not see, but how much we've kind of built on our reporting in 2021. I should actually say at this point that we only started accounting in 2022. So last year, we backtracked to make sure that we had everything up to date. But we only have reports for 2021 and 22. It's never too late. It was a lot of work, but it was very much worth doing. And we got to a point as a business where we had to start doing that. So we fortunately didn't leave it too late.
I think it's great to be able to just see an example of a report as well, to see what we're working towards. Yeah,
we're really, really happy with this report. And for us, that is absolutely key for PR and for sales. I had the sales team constantly on at me, when is this going to be available? Because customers want to see what you're doing. So to be able to hand over that is so valuable. Cool.
Any questions, guys?
I will have to head off in about 5 minutes if that's okay. But
no, that's fine, Molly. We really appreciate your time. Questions, guys, don't be shy.
Yeah, do jump in. My email address is there as well if you ever want to follow up on anything.
Oh, that's really helpful, Molly. I think for me, it's kind of, because we're a very small team as well, it's helped to kind of break it down, and you've certainly focused on the social aspect as well, which I think is important. And I think it just looks more achievable than this overarching kind of sustainability. We can't do anything with it, it's too big and it's in the corporate space. So for me, that was really, really helpful, because I'm learning a lot. It's not my area of expertise at all. What about you guys? So Tim, you've attended the previous two. Is it starting to crystallize more for you? Are you starting to get a clearer picture and kind of actions that you can start working on?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've started looking at the kind of scope 1 and scope 2 elements of nice. Our business, and it is quite interesting how the scope 3 kind of fits